Hello and welcome to Course 3, Lesson 36. Today we're going to multiply and divide integers. We are also going to multiply and divide terms. So make sure this title is written down into your notebook. Get started. We've got 6 examples and a chart, and then there's the practice set at the end. So this may take a while, so get something to eat, something to snack on, and something to drink, and we'll get started. Okay, so let's summarize this problem. So make sure you have this written down in your notebook. Alicia owes $6 to each of 4 friends. How much money does she owe? We can solve this using integers. Owing $6 can be represented by a negative 6. Thus, this is our problem. Write this down, negative 6 and in parentheses, and then positive 4 in parentheses. The negative 6 is what she owes, and she has 4 friends. So the parentheses means that we're going to multiply those together. So these are our rules that you need to have in your notebook. The product of a positive integer and a negative integer is a negative integer. In other words, if you have a positive times a negative, you get a negative. Okay, a positive times a negative is a negative. Rule number 2, the product of 2 integers or two positive integers is positive. So a negative times a negative is equal to a positive. So let's kind of summarize this. This is the rule. If you have the same sign, let me change this. Okay, so when you're multiplying and dividing integers, if you have the same sign, such as a negative times a negative, so same sign, so a negative multiplied times a negative, the answer is always positive. Is always positive. So same sign, you get a positive. Negative times a negative is equal to a positive. All right, if you have different signs, so let's say you have a positive and a negative, so different sign. So if you have a positive times a negative, you will always get, oh, what did I put there? That doesn't work. So let's erase that. Sorry about that. So if you have a positive times a negative, then you end up getting a negative. Positive times a negative is equal to a negative. So summarize the rules. Here they are. Same sign, you get a positive answer. If you have different signs, you get a negative answer. Now that only works when you have 2 numbers. If you start getting into more numbers, then you have to do them one at a time. And we'll see something like that in a minute. All right, so make sure this is in your notes. And let's look at some examples now. Okay, I'm sorry this is a little blurry. I don't know what happened, but we're going to go with it. All right, let's write down example 1. You have 4 examples in example 1. So the first one is negative 10 times negative 5. The parentheses means to multiply. Remember that if the signs are the same, it's positive. So a negative times a negative makes a positive. So you do 5 times 10, which is 50, and you keep it positive. If we look at B, write it down, you have a positive times a negative. If the signs are different, the answer is going to be negative. So now you get a negative 50. And for C, what does this symbol mean? When you have a fraction bar there, that means to divide. So this means negative 10 divided by negative 5. The rules for division are the same as multiplication. I'll say that again. The rules for division are the same as multiplication. So if you divide a negative divided by a negative, that means the same sign, you get a positive. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. And look at D. Again, now you have a positive 10 being divided by a negative 5. So a positive divided by a negative, because they have different signs, the answer would be negative. All right, to summarize, if you have the same sign, doesn't matter if you are multiplying or dividing, they have the same rule. Same sign, the answer is what? Positive. The answer is positive. Okay, different sign. When you're multiplying and dividing, the different sign, The answer is what? You're right, negative. Answer is negative. Okay, let's move on because there's more to this than this. Example 2, we have a word problem. Don't be afraid of word problems, they're easy. All right, it says every month $25 is automatically deducted. Deducted means that it's taken out of Newton's checking account to pay for internet service. Write an expression using integers that shows the effect on Newton's account of 6 months of charges. So we're going to convert this into math. So let's look at the number 25. Since it's being deducted, that means that's a negative $25. So negative $25. Now we're going to write an expression and it shows the effect on his account after 6 months. 6 months is key. So if we multiply that times 6, positive 6, we'll see the effect that it has on his account. Well, 6 times negative 25, because you have a positive times a negative, you'll get a negative answer. So you get a negative $150. So the effect on his account is that he's down or out of $150. All right, let's go to the next question. All right, now you're going to see the effect of an exponent on a negative number. So example 3, simplify. So you have negative 1 to the 5th power. So let's see what this would look like. So it's negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. 5 negative 1s multiplied together. So we'll start with the first one. A negative times a negative, that makes a positive. And then we're going to multiply this negative 1, the next one. Positive times a negative makes a negative. And then we'll bring this one down and we'll multiply the negative 1 times the negative 1. That makes a positive 1. And then we're going to bring this one down and multiply. So we have a negative 1 times a positive 1, so we get a negative 1. So a negative 1 to the 5th power is a negative 1. So what would we get if we did a negative 1 to the 6th power? Well, let's see. Negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. Write it out 6 times. Did I do 6? Yes. Now let's go from left to right. So first you get a positive. Then we do that and we'll get a negative. And then we'll do a negative times a negative and get a positive. And then we'll do a positive times a negative and get a negative. And then negative times a negative, we get a positive 1. So here we get a positive 1. So now let me summarize this particular rule for you. If you have a negative number that you're raising to a power, and the power that it's raising it to is odd, so you have an odd power and you're raising a negative number, the answer will always be negative. The answer is negative. Again, if you raise a negative number to an odd power, the answer is negative. If, on the other hand, you raise a negative number to an even power, it will always be positive. Your answer will be positive. And that's something you need to remember and you will use a lot. All right, let's move on. Okay, remember we have 6 examples. So this is example 4. So write this down. You have y equals x squared. Find y if x is negative 2. And that's pretty simple. So we'll just write y equals x squared. But we're going to substitute a negative 2 for x. So that means y is equal to a negative 2 squared. So negative 2 times negative 2. And again, I'm raising it to an even power. If I raise it to an even power, then the answer will be positive 4. All right, for B, it says if x squared equals 9, then x can be which 2 numbers? So let's see. If x squared is equal to 9, then what can x be? Well, x can be 3 times 3, right? Because 3 times 3 makes 9, so that would be 3 squared. Or x can be a negative 3 times a negative 3, which is also negative times a negative makes a positive. So the answer is x can be either a positive 3 or a negative 3. Because if you raise it to the second power, which is even, you'll get a positive 9 both times. Okay, so here is a box that I would like in your notes that summarizes all the rules for integers. First, you have the rule for adding. When you add the integers, it says you subtract the absolute values of the add-ins. So if you have different signs, you subtract basically and take the sign with the greater value. So the rule for adding, and you can abbreviate this, to find the sum with different signs, subtract and take the sign with the greater value. Then it says to find the sum with the same sign, you add and you keep the sign. Add and take the sign. All right, for subtracting integers, instead of subtracting a number, you're going to add the opposite, which is also the same thing as keep, change, change. And then for multiplying and dividing, the rule is that you multiply or divide as normal, and if the two numbers have the same sign, the answer is positive. If the two numbers have different signs, the answer is negative. So have that summary in your notes, and you can always refer to that when you're doing integers. Now, we have a couple more examples, and they have to do with topic, and that is multiplying and dividing terms. So write that down, multiplying and dividing terms. Now we've added and subtracted terms, combining like terms, added and subtracted. Now we're going to multiply terms together. All right, so let's see what we would do. Write down example 5 in your notes. And here we have 6x squared y in parentheses, and I'm going to multiply that by negative 2xyz. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the 6, the two numbers, and multiply those together. So I do 6 times negative 2. Well, 6 times negative 2, positive times a negative, that's negative 12. Then we're going to have to remember our rules of exponents here, because we're going to multiply the x's together, and then we're going to multiply the y's together. So you're going to multiply like terms. So x squared times x. So x squared times x, if I do that, remember x has an exponent of 1, and when I multiply those together, I add the exponents, so that means I get x to the third. And then I'm going to multiply the y here, the y times the y. Well, y1 times y1, I add the exponent, so I get y2. And then z, I don't have anything to multiply, so I just leave the z there. And that's how we multiply terms together. So the numbers times the numbers, and then the letters times the appropriate letters. And you add the exponents. All right, so let's B. B now, because we have this fraction bar, we're dividing. So I'm going to write this one out. 6x. Now what is x squared? X squared is xx. So I'm going to expand it out so I can see what I have, because I'm dividing. And then I have a negative 2, and then I have an x, and then y, and z. Now when I'm dividing, I'm going to divide the numbers. So I do 6 divided by negative 2. Positive divided by negative is a negative 3. And then I'm going to cancel out any x's that I have in common. So those cancel out, because anything divided by itself is 1. And then I'm going to cancel the y's, because I have a y on top and a y on the bottom. So what I'm left with is x on top. And then this 2 cancels because I divided it. So what I'm left with is z on the bottom. And that's going to be my answer. And we'll practice that a little bit more if that's confusing for you. All right, now for our last example, before we get to the practice set, is that we're going to expand. And expanding again means to multiply, so we're going to multiply using the distributive property. The difference is now, instead of just multiplying by a number, we're also going to multiply by a variable. So I'm going to take the 3x and I'm going to multiply it times the 2x. So the way I do that is I multiply the numbers, 3 times 2, so 3 times 2 is 6, and then I do x times x. X times x, remember, x1 times x1 is equal to x2. So I get x squared. Then I'm going to take the 3x and multiply it times the 4. So 3x times 4, well, 3x times 4, you're going to multiply the 3 times the 4 to get 12, and then you don't have anything to multiply the x by, so you just bring it there. So this would be minus 12x, and that's going to be your answer for A. For B, we're going to multiply, but now we have some negative numbers that we're going to multiply. So it's the same thing, only with a negative number. So now I'm multiplying negative 3x times a positive 2x. So I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times the 2, and I get a negative 6. And then x times x is x squared. Then I'm going to take this negative 3x and multiply it times the 4. So I have a negative, I bring down my subtraction sign that I have there. And then negative 3x times 4. Well, a negative times a positive gives me a negative 12, and then I have to bring my x over. And then what do I do to simplify this? Because I'm subtracting a negative, I do keep, change, change. So then this becomes positive. So my answer simplified is negative 6x squared plus 12x. All right, welcome to some algebra. So this could be a little confusing. Let's practice. Okay, so here's your practice set. Let's go ahead and do these. So you can pause this and go ahead and do these and then check your answers. If you would like to do that, pause it and then do it. And I'm going to go ahead and do the problems. So let me get started. You can always pause and then fast forward. So A, make sure you write the problem down. A, you have a negative times a negative, so you get a positive 36. B, negative times a positive, so you get a negative 36. C, you're dividing a negative divided by a negative, so you get a positive 4. D, a negative divided by a positive is a negative 4. Here you have a raising a negative 6 to the power of 2, which is even, so you're going to get a positive 36. Here you're raising this to an even power, so you get a positive 1. Now we're raising this to an odd power. So odd power means 3 times 3 times 3. So that's negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. You get a positive 9, negative 27. And here, this is equal to a negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So this is positive 4, negative 8, positive 16. And then for I, solve, write two possible solutions. X is either 10 or negative 10. Either one will equal a positive 100. All right, next page. All right, the last part of our practice set is here. Again, you can work these problems and then just check them, or you can follow along. What are the square roots of 100? Square root of 100 is either 10, which is 10 squared, or you have a negative 10 squared. So it would be 10 and negative 10. Either one equals 100. K, drilling for core samples in the seafloor. The driller used 12 drill rods 8 meters long to reach the surface of the ocean to the lowest core. Write an equation using integers that shows the depth of the core sample with respect to the sea level. So he's going to use 12 drill rods that are 8 meters long, but he's going down on sea level, so I think we multiply by a -8 because meters long, which means we're going to the lowest core sample. So one of these has to be negative. So you would get a -96. The depth of the core is meters. All right, go to this one. Now we're going to simplify. That means we're going to multiply. So I multiply negative times a positive, -12 times +3, -36. And then I do x times x, which is x squared. Then y squared times y, which is y to the third. And then z. Remember to add your exponents. On m, we're dividing. So I do a -12 divided by a +3. That gives me a negative, oh, you know what? Let me expand this first. I forgot. So -12 x. Y squared means y times z. And then 3x and y. Now, once you've expanded, let's divide. So -12 divided by 3 is -4. The x cancels, the y cancels. So I'm left with nothing on the bottom because I divided, so this cancels. So this is -4 on top, and then z would be my answer to m. All right, expanding means I multiply. So I do 2x times 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. X times x is x squared. Then 2x times 5. I have a subtraction sign, so 2 times 5 is 10, and x. Do the same thing on O. I do -2 times +2, that's -4. X times x is x squared. And then I do subtracting, and then I do a -2 times a +5, that's -10, and then I have an x. I simplify this. -4x squared, keep, change, so I get 10x. And that is your answer. And we are done for today. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. You know you have to do the written practice now. Take care.